I was a rookie nurse when I had to take over a surgery because the lead surgeon showed up drunk. It was terrifying, but with the patient's life on the line, I had no choice but to step in and finish the operation myself. I've been a nurse for just under a single year. It's nothing compared to the decades some of my colleagues have under their belts. But those 12 months have aged me in ways I never imagined. People think being a nurse especially in the operating room is about calm efficiency, like you're just another cog in the machine, passing instruments to the surgeons who hold all the power. And yeah, sometimes it feels like that. But then there are moments that shake you down to the bone. Moments where you realize that no, we're not the brilliant surgeons, not the anesthesiologists, not even the system is untouchable. I had one of those moments on my 3rd month working in the OR, and I'll never forget it. Because that day I went from the green rookie everyone underestimated to the guy who had to do the unthinkable. The day I operated on someone myself. My name doesn't matter, call me Alex. I'm 24 years old, fresh out of nursing school. And when I got my first job in a mid-sized hospital, I felt like I'd won the lottery. I'd been through hell to get there, sleepless nights memorizing anatomy, grueling clinical shifts. The endless anxiety of wondering whether I'd ever be good enough to work in the OR. The first few weeks were brutal. The OR is like another planet. The sterile smell of antiseptic, the cold blast of the AC always cranked to high, and the tensional weight of knowing that one mistake could ruin everything. I spent my early shifts just trying to blend in, passing clamps, setting up trays, learning who I could talk to and who would bite my head off if I asked a dumb question. The surgeons, most of them didn't even know my name. I was kid, rookie, hey you. But I didn't mind. I was there to learn. What I didn't expect was that I'd be forced to take the wheel long before I was ready. It was a Thursday morning and late spring warm sunlight streaming through the parking lot. Windows, the kind of morning that makes you think, today's going to be a good day. The OR board was packed. We had a couple of major procedures lined up, but I wasn't assigned to those. Instead, I was placed in OR3, where we had a small, relatively straightforward case scheduled, the removal of a lipomal harmless fatty lump on a patient's upper back. Routine, low stakes, perfect for me to observe, help with instruments, and not get in the way. I met the patient, Mr. R, while he was being prepped. He was in his mid-40s, friendly and that nervous, chatty way people get when they're about to go under the knife. Just my luck to end up with a lump this ugly, he joked, tapping his shoulder blade. At least you guys will make me pretty. Again, right? I grinned under my mask. That's the plan, quick and out. You'll barely know we were here. I meant it, at the time. I really thought this would be just another simple case. The OR team was small that day. Dr. Howard, the surgeon. The man was a legend in the hospital, razor sharp, brilliant with a scalpel, but infamous for his ego. I'd only worked near him once before, and even then, I'd been terrified to make eye contact. He had this aura like he owned the room. Like everyone else was just furniture. Marla, the senior scrub nurse, she was tough as nails. The kind of woman who could shut down a room full of cocky residents with a single look. She was my anchor that day, though I didn't realize how much I need her yet. Dr. Patel, the anesthesiologist, quiet, serious, steady as a rock. The kind of guy you trust to handle anything that goes wrong with the patient's airway. And me, the rookie, mostly there to observe, hand instruments, and not faint. We gathered for the quick pre-op briefing, reviewing the plan for Mr. R. I was nervous, but not for any specific reason, just the usual jitters of being the lowest. Rung on the ladder dot when Dr. Howard walked in, something felt off. He was late. Not unusual for a big-name surgeon, but when he stepped into the scrub area, I noticed his movements weren't quite right. His posture was a little too relaxed, his steps not as sharp, and when he spoke, "All right, let's get this over with," his voice was just slightly slurred. I glanced at Marla, wondering if she'd heard it too, but she was busy setting up the suture trays. Then, as he reached for his gown, he fumbled, dropped it. He laughed it off with a muttered curse, but I felt my stomach tighten. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe he was tired. Maybe I was projecting my nerves onto him, but deep down, a voice whispered, "Something's wrong." We wheeled Mr. R into the OR. He gave me a nervous thumbs up as we transferred him to the table. "You'll be fine," I said. Adjusting the sterile drapes, Dr. Patel did his thing smooth, professional, putting the patient under with a few calm words and a reassuring hand on the shoulder. I scrubbed in, standing beside Marla as she handed me tools to arrange on the Mayo. Stand. I forced my hands to stay steady, focusing on the task in hand. Trying to drown out that voice in my head, everything looked fine on the surface. The beeping of the monitors was steady. The room was quiet except for the hum of machines and the soft rustle of sterile gowns. And then Dr. Howard picked up the scalpel. The cut should have been clean, controlled, shallow. This was a small, superficial procedure, but as he made the first incision, I saw his hand tremble. The cut went deeper than it should have, too deep. Blood welled up faster than expected. Marla stiffened beside me. "Suction," she said sharply. Passing the device, I handed it to Dr. Howard, but he fumbled with it, nearly dropping it. And that's when I caught the faint, unmistakable scent on his breath. Alcohol it hit me like a slap. I froze, my heart pounding. He's drunked out in that moment. The OR didn't feel like a controlled, sterile environment anymore. It felt like a powder keg. Do I say something? Do I stop him? I'm just a rookie nurse, one word out of line, and I could lose this job. But if I don't, Mr. R's life is in his hands, and his hands aren't steady. The moment I realized Dr. Howard was drunk, my blood went ice cold. I froze in place. Clutching the forceps I just sterilized. My brain short-circuiting between this can't be real and what the hell do I do? If I was wrong, I'd be accusing one of the hospital's most respected surgeons of being intoxicated on the job. That would be career suicide. But if I was right, I glanced at Marla. She was watching him closely now, her jaw tight. She knew. She had to know. But no one said anything, not Dr. Patel, who was adjusting the anesthesia drip, not the surgical techs prepping gauze in the corner. It was like we were all collectively holding our breath, waiting for someone else to break the silence. That's the thing about operating rooms, they run on hierarchy. Surgeons are at the top of that food chain, almost untouchable. When you're new, like me, you're expected to follow orders without hesitation, to trust the people above you implicitly. But trust works both ways. I'd spent the past 3 months learning to trust surgeons like Dr. Howard, men and women whose confidence was so unshakable. It was almost intimidating. Seeing him like the sloppy, off-balance human was terrifying. My gut screamed at me to say something. My brain told me to stay quiet. Scalpel, Dr. Howard said. Holding out his hand, Marla placed it carefully into his palm. He took it, but the motion was off his grip to loose, his fingers fumbling for just a split second. Here we go, he muttered, making the first incision. I felt my breath catch. The cut was wrong. It was deeper than necessary, jagged like he pressed. Too hard. Blood welled up, faster than it should have for such a small procedure. Marla's hand twitched toward the suction device before he even asked for it. Clamp, he said, his tone sharp, impatient. I handed it over, my hand brushing his for the briefest moment. That's when I smelled it again. That sickly sweet, unmistakable tang of alcohol. My stomach turned. There was no denying it anymore. He moved in for the next cut, but instead of gliding through the tissue with practice ease, his scalpel slipped out. It wasn't catastrophic, he didn't hit anything vital, but it was sloppy enough that Marla and I exchanged a sharp glance. She didn't say anything, but her eyes spoke volumes. This isn't safe. Dr. Patel said quietly from the head of the table. Everything all right? I'm fine. Dr. Howard snapped. Focus on your job. The tension was suffocating now. Every nerve in my body was on edge. I could feel the sweat beating under my scrub cap, my gloves clammy as I passed instruments. Then it happened. Dr. Howard made another incision close to the underlying muscle. He cursed under his breath and jerked his hand back. I don't know what came over me. I just moved. Stop, I heard myself say. My voice was louder than I intended, cutting through the room like a scalpel of its own. Everything froze. Marla's eyes widened. Dr. Patel looked at me like I just committed professional suicide. What did you say? Dr. Howard asked slowly, his tone dangerously calm. You're not steady, I said. My heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. You're going to hurt him. The silence that followed was suffocating. I could feel the heat of everyone's gaze on me. Doctor. Howard's face darkened. You're out of line, nurse. Alex, Marla said softly, like a warning. But I couldn't take it back now. You've been drinking, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I can smell it. The words hung there, heavy and electric. For a split second, I thought he was going to throw the scalpel at me. But then Dr. Patel stepped forward, his expression cold and professional. Dr. Howard. He said firmly, step away from the table. Now. Howard hesitated. He looked around the room, as if daring someone to challenge him, but no one did. Finally, with a scoff, he tossed the scalpel onto the tray. Fine, you think you can do this better? Be my guest. And with that, he stormed out of the OR, ripping off his gloves. The room was dead silent. I looked at Marla. What now? She looked me dead in the eye. You're doing it. My blood ran cold. What? I'm not a surgeon. You've assisted enough times, she said firmly. It's a simple excision. I'll guide you. Patel will guide you, but that man cannot come back in here. I stared down at Mr. R, unconscious and vulnerable on the table. His life, his trust was literally in our hands, and somehow, those hands were mine. My gloves were damp with sweat. The scalpel on the tray seemed to weigh 100 pounds. And I couldn't believe anyone in the room was serious about this. I wasn't a surgeon. I wasn't even close. I was the guy who handed the tools, not the one who used them. But everyone was looking at me like there was no other choice. You've seen this done, Marla said, her voice calm but firm. Step by step, we'll walk you through it. You can do this. Dr. Patel's voice was even lower, more deliberate. The patient's stable. We need to finish. Just a clean excision and sutures. I'll monitor vitals. You keep your hands steady. I took a deep breath, the smell of antiseptic stinging my nose, and picked up the scalpel. My hand trembled as I positioned it over the incision Dr. Howard had already started. I told myself it was just like practice, like the time I'd done. Simulations on cadavers during training, only this wasn't a simulation. This was real. I made the cut slowly, carefully, the sound of my own breathing loud in my ears. My glove squeaked against the handle, and for a moment I thought I'd drop. But Marla was there, watching like a hawk. Good, she whispered, a little to the left. There. Perfect, keep going. You're fine. I followed her instructions, focusing on nothing but the flesh under my hands. The pale yellow of the lipoma contrasting with the red tissue around it. My heart pounded. But my mind started to narrow in on the work. It was terrifying and strangely hypnotic at the same time. Every movement had to be exact. Too shallow, and I'd get nowhere. Too deep, and I'd risk cutting into muscle. Clamp. Marla said. I handed it to myself, almost laughing at the absurdity of that moment. I was both the assistant and the surgeon now. I used it to gently lift the fatty tissue, exposing the edges where I needed to separate it. Scissors, she prompted, passing them to me. I stepped carefully, feeling the resistance as I freed the lipoma from its surrounding tissue. I could almost hear my old professor's voices in my head. Work slow, steady, never rush. Respect every layer. There was a moment where the tissue started to bleed more than expected. My chest tightened, panic rising, but Patel's voice cut through the noise. Breathe, Alex, apply pressure. You're fine. I did as he said, pressing the gauze and waiting. My mind wanted to spiral, but my hands kept moving, like they remembered what to do even if I didn't. Marla leaned in slightly, her tone low, but reassuring. You're doing it. This is exactly what Howard would do, except cleaner. You've got this. I swallowed hard, the scalpel now lighter in my hand, almost familiar. I finished freeing the lipoma and lifted it out carefully, placing it in the tray. It was such a small, stupid lump of tissue, but I felt like I'd just pulled out a ticking bomb. My knees nearly gave out with relief. Nice job, Marla said. Now sutures, slow and tight, just like we practiced. You can't let it gape. My fingers shook as I threaded the needle, but I got it on the first try. The suturing was almost meditative needling, arc through the tissue, pull, knot, repeat. Each stitch gave me a strange kind of confidence. By the time I placed the last one, my breathing had leveled out. Dr. Patel glanced at the monitors and gave me a small nod. Vitals are good. You did it. I stared down at the closed wound, the neat line of sutures. For a moment, I couldn't believe it was over. My brain was still stuck on the image of Howard nearly cutting to deep, the smell of alcohol heavy in the room. I didn't know what was going to happen next, how we'd explain this, but for now, the patient was safe. Let's clean up, Marla said, her voice quieter now, almost soft. You did good, kid. Better than good. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely set the instruments down. As we wheeled the patient out to recovery, I felt like I'd just come back from war. When we stepped out of the OR, Dr. Howard was nowhere to be seen. I half expected him to storm in and start shouting, but the corridor was empty. For a second, I wondered if I'd hallucinated the whole thing. Alex, Marla said, snapping me back to reality. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong here. You just proved otherwise. I didn't feel like I'd proved anything. I felt like I just barely avoided a disaster. Dr. Patel looked at me and said, we'll need to talk to administration about what happened, but first, take a breather. You look like you're going to pass out. He wasn't wrong. My legs were jelly. My scrubs were damp with sweat, and my heart was still pounding, like I just run a marathon. I sat in the locker room, my back against the cool metal, trying to calm my breathing. The fluorescent light overhead buzzed, a relentless reminder that I was still in the hospital, still in the aftermath of what had just happened. My hands were trembling so badly that I had to clasp them together just to stop the shaking. I kept replaying every second of that surgery in my head, the weight of the scalpel. The moment my blade cut through skin, the quiet, deliberate voice of Marla coaching me through each step, there was this strange mix of pride and horror inside me. Pride because I'd done it. I had actually finished the procedure and saved a patient from harm. Horror because it never should have happened. We shouldn't have been forced into that position. Dr. Howard had been drunk, and I had just done a surgeon's job without any real authority or training to do so. What if I had failed? What if Mr. R never woke up? The door creaked open and Marla stepped in, already out of her scrubs, a steaming paper cup of coffee in her hand. She looked at me for a long moment, then handed me the coffee without saying a word. I took it with both hands, grateful for the heat and for her steady presence. You did good, she finally said, settling on the bench across from me. I mean it. I don't say that to rookies often. I stared into the coffee like it might hold answers. I'm not supposed to do what I did. That wasn't my job. That was insane. Marla shrugged. Maybe, but if you hadn't stepped in, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. That patient would have been in real danger. Her voice softened. I've seen a lot of things in my years here, Alex. I've seen surgeons crack under pressure. I've seen mistakes that never should have happened. What you did was brave and necessary. I don't feel brave, I admitted. I feel like I'm about to throw up. That's normal, she said with a faint smile. Welcome to the OR. Dr. Patel walked in a few minutes later, his expression as serious as always. He leaned against the locker beside Marla, arms crossed. Howard's gone home, he said bluntly. Home? I asked, blinking. That's it, after what he just did. For now, Patel said, I sent him home before he could do any more damage. I called the charge nurse, and administration is already aware that something went wrong in OR3 today. I didn't tell them everything yet. I wanted to talk to you both first. I felt my chest tighten. Am I in trouble? I stepped in. I didn't even know. Patel said, cutting me off. You did the right thing, legally, ethically. What you did saved that patient. But we need to be careful how we explain this. There's going to be an investigation. Marla rolled her eyes. They'll cover for Howard, won't they? Patel hesitated. He's a senior surgeon. He's valuable to the hospital. But coming in under the influence, that's a line we can't ignore. If he tries to blame Alex, I don't care what he tries, I interrupted. My voice sharper than I intended. I'm not taking the fall for him. My voice cracked, and I had to take a breath. I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. Marla gave me a firm nod, like she approved of my sudden backbone. Good. Don't let them push you around. You've earned the right to speak up. Later that afternoon, we were called into a small conference room on the administrative floor. The kind of room that always smells faintly of stale coffee and fear. A man in a crisp suit sat at the head of the table, a tablet in front of him. He introduced himself as Mr. Bennett, one of the hospital's risk managers. Walk me through what happened, he said, his tone neutral but piercing. I started to speak, but Marla jumped in, laying out the event step by step. Dr. Howard arriving late, his clumsy incision, the smell of alcohol, my intervention. She didn't sugarcoat any of it. Patel backed her up, his calm voice adding weight to every word. When they finally turned to me, I was shaking again, but I told the truth, every detail. I didn't try to make myself sound heroic. I didn't feel heroic. I just said what happened, exactly as it happened. Bennett listened silently, tapping on his tablet. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You understand the gravity of this, right? What you did today was highly irregular, but it also might have saved the hospital from a lawsuit or worse. I wasn't sure how to respond. I just nodded. We'll need to follow up with Dr. Howard, Bennett continued. There will be disciplinary action, but for now, I need the three of you to keep this quiet. No posting online, no hallway gossip. Understood? Yes. We said in unison, though I could feel Marla's glare cutting through him like a scalpel. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the smell of antiseptic still in my nostrils, the weight of the scalpel still in my hand. I thought about Mr. R, about the trust he had in us. He had no idea that his life had almost been in the hands of a man who wasn't sober, or that a terrified rookie nurse had been the one to finish his operation. The next morning, I went to check on him in recovery. He was sitting up, groggy but smiling, a bandage across his back. When he saw me, his face lit up. "Hey, Doc," he said. I didn't correct him. "Thanks for taking care of me. You guys were amazing." I didn't know what to say. I just smiled and said, "We're glad you're doing well. You'll be heading home soon." As I walked out of the room, something inside me shifted. Yesterday, I had felt like a fraud, like I didn't belong in that OR. But now I understood that sometimes belonging isn't about titles or experience. It's about doing what has to be done when no one else will. The hospital corridors felt different over the next few days. Every time I walked past the OR board or past a group of staff talking in hushed voices, I wondered if they knew, if they were whispering about me, about what happened with Howard. I tried to keep my head down, focus on my shifts, but it was impossible not to feel the tension. Howard hadn't been back since that day. Word had he been placed on administrative leave while the hospital did their internal review. Marla told me that was just their polite way of saying, "We're trying to figure out how to sweep this under the rug." On my third shift after the incident, I was restocking supplies in OR3 when I heard a voice behind me double quotes, well, if it isn't the hero nurse." I turned and there he was, Howard. He looked rough. His normally perfect hair was disheveled, his face pale, eyes bloodshot. He was wearing regular clothes, not scrubs, but even like this, he had that predatory arrogance about him. "Doctor," I said stiffly. "Don't doctor me," he said, smirking. "You think you're some kind of savior now, huh? You think you can cut me out of a procedure and not pay for it?" I swallowed hard. My heart was hammering, but I forced myself to stand straight. "You came in drunk. I wasn't going to let you hurt the patient." His jaw tightened. "You're a damn nurse, kid. You think you can operate? You think anyone's going to thank you when this blows up? They'll bury you. They always do." I wanted to back down, but something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the memory of that scalpel shaking in his hand, or the sight of Mr. R's trustful eyes before he went under. "You can threaten me all you want," I said, my voice firmer than I expected, "but I'm not going to apologize for saving someone's life. If you want to ruin me for that, go ahead. I'll tell everyone what I saw." Howard's smirk faltered. For a second, I saw a flash of something in his eye, shame, maybe, or just anger at losing control. He stepped closer, his voice low. "You don't know how this place works, rookie. People like me, we don't go down because of people like you. Maybe you should." I shot back. "Maybe that's the problem." For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he let out a bitter laugh and turned on his heel, storming out of OR3. I stood there shaking, not sure if I'd just signed my own professional death warrant. Marla found me 10 minutes later, still frozen by the supply cabinet. I told her what happened, and she sighed, shaking her head. "Don't let him scare you. He's cornered, that's all. Guys like Howard, when they're cornered, they lash out. You think he'll, I don't know, make something up. Blame me. If he tries, we got your back," she said. "Patel, me, even the anesthesiology logs, they all prove what went down. You're not alone, Alex." Her words calmed me a little, but the unease lingered. I couldn't stop thinking about what Howard had said. People like me don't go down because of people like you. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd end up blacklisted for stepping out of line. But I'd made my choice. If I had to, I'd make it again, the next week. I was called into another meeting with the administration. This time, there were more suits around the table, and Howard was there too. He looked polished again, his hair perfect, his white coat immaculate. It was like nothing had happened, but his eyes were cold when they met mine. "Let's get this straight. Bennett, the risk manager, said, we've reviewed the incident. The patient's outcome was positive, no complications. However, the events that led to Nurse Alex performing the procedure are highly unusual and require documentation." Howard spoke first, his tone dripping with condescension. "I was perfectly capable of finishing the procedure. I simply allowed the nurse to observe hands-on for educational purposes. There was no risk to the patient." I felt my jaw clench. Marla, sitting beside me, immediately cut in. "That's not true, and you know it. You were impaired. We all saw it. Alex stepped in because you were shaking like a leaf and about to cut to deep." Howard's eyes narrowed at her. "Careful, Marla. You don't know what you're talking about." "I know what I saw." She snapped up. Bennett raised a hand. "Enough. We're not here to argue. We're here to find a resolution that keeps the hospital's integrity intact and ensures this doesn't happen again." I spoke up before I lost my nerve, with all due respect. This isn't just about the hospital's integrity, it's about patients' lives. If Dr. Howard shows up impaired again, someone might not be so lucky. The room went silent. Howard glared at me like he wanted to burn a hole through my skull. But Bennett leaned back and said, "Noted, we'll be implementing additional checks. Dr. Howard, you will undergo an assessment, and for now, you'll be removed from elective procedures." Howard looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. He didn't say a word after the meeting. I stepped outside into the sunlight. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension start to unravel in my chest. Marla clapped me on the back. "You handled that well, kid." "I just told the truth," I said. "Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do," she replied. "You'll make a damn good nurse. Maybe even more than that." That afternoon, I went to check on Mr. R one last time before discharge. He was packing up his things, a big smile on his face. "Hey, Doc," he said, again calling me something I wasn't. "Thanks for everything. My shoulder feels great already." I smiled. "Glad to hear it. Just take it easy for a few weeks." "No, heavy lifting will do. You guys were amazing," he said. "I don't know what I'd have done without you." I nodded, but inside, I thought, you have no idea. That night, lying in bed, I finally let the exhaustion wash over me. I thought about everything Howard, the scalpel in my hand, the weight of responsibility I hadn't been ready for but had taken on anyway. I realized something. This job isn't just about routines and protocols, it's about courage. Not the loud, heroic kind, but the quiet courage to do what needs to be done when nobody else will. I don't know what the future holds for me in that OR, but I know one thing now. I belong there, and when the time comes again, I won't hesitate.